So now I know why the AF is in the 1600 AF, because it is disappointing AF. I've put this 1600 AF in here in the B450 Aorus M motherboard, and there's not a whole lot of options when it comes to overclocking this thing. All I've got to do is a manual overclock, and that's pretty much it. And so in this current setup, I've got the Aorus 450M using this XPG SX6000 for the NVMe and the M.2 slot, using an RX 580 XTR, and G-Skill Ripjaws V-Series. Now here's something very interesting. These Ripjaws are DDR4 3200 when you turn on XMP, and it can't even hold it. The IMC integrated memory controller on the 1600 AF cannot even hold XMP of 3200. It is doing it at 2133. That's all it can do is 2133. So if you're spending money on RAM that is higher than the clock that the IMC of the 1600 AF can actually do, it's probably a complete and utter waste of time, because it can't even run RAM at that high of a level. So this makes for a pretty cheap build. If you're looking at how much an 1600 AF costs, it goes for about 104 on Amazon. Okay, this is the original 1600. 1600 AF is the 12 nanometer version. This is the 14 nanometer version. So you can get a processor for about 104. You can pick up a set of RAM instead of spending 114. Well, at 16 gigabyte, it's only about $70. I picked up a set of Oloys that only cost $40 on Amazon. I picked them up the other day. So processor and RAM you can get for only about $140. That's not bad. And it's these guys right here, the Oloys. So it's not bad at all. But it is very disappointing that the 1600 AF cannot hold any high memory clocks, even on XMP. So I'm running the F50 Agesa version of BIOS for this motherboard right now. So I'm going to try to run it, try to update it, see if it changes anything, but I highly doubt it. Let's look at what it did in Cinebench. Cinebench R20, 2687 points, which is very low for a 6-core 12-thread processor. If you look at what another 6-core 12-thread like a 3600 does, stock, 3497. And this is, I'm running this thing at stock. You can barely overclock this guy any more than it already is. So remember that number, 2687. That's what we're seeing. If you go over here and you take a look at what the benches are that it'll run, we'll run this benchmark right now, and we'll see what the number is that it comes up with for the CPU-Z bench. But overall, it's really not very impressive as far as what it can do. If we turn on HW Info, so HW Info, I mean, these AF processors are great. It's probably a better binning than your average 12 nanometer setup that allows for a much lower voltage, but you're not going to clock very much. So a lot of these processors that are X, XT, AF, I think they're made to perform a certain way out of the box, but you're not going to get a pull out of the silicon lottery and get something that's going to clock amazingly like a 3600. If this was my introduction to the red team, I probably would have been fairly disappointed. So it was actually good that I got a 3600, because that thing allowed me to go to 4.7, which isn't far off from Intel territory, but I mean, it's 500 megahertz, half a gigahertz slower. So remember these numbers, 391, 3089, these are still relatively low, but I'm going to update the Agesa, and I'm also going to go ahead and go in here and change up what it's doing for RAM, because we're going to put the Oloys in, because the Ripjaws that we've got in here right now can't do any more than 2133. The integrated memory controller just won't take it. So I've taken out these rip jaws, which it couldn't even support the basic 3200 that it runs at, and put in these alloys. Guess what? It's supporting it at 2400. So we've got 16 gig of this, 2 sticks at 1600, or I'm sorry, 16 gig, 2400. And I've also gone ahead and upgraded the BIOS to the F51F. I don't know if it's really going to make a difference. If we look here, this time, if we look at memory, 1197 times 2, 2400. So it's running what it's supposed to be running. For memory, let's look at our Cinebench score is 2647. I don't think there's much improvement there for what it was before with a different RAM. Let's see what the benchmark looks like when we run CPU-Z's bench. So both times we were running OBS at the same time that we did the benchmark, and so you can compare those results. They're not super high. 3600 is going to be much better than the 1600 AF. But if you're looking to save 60, 70 bucks plus another 30 bucks on RAM for your build, you can upgrade later. Just spend the money on the motherboard so that you can do the upgrade later. Let's see how much processor it's taking. 4.1% of processor is what OBS is taking up on the 1600 AF. Same GPU as before, so that's what we're getting for our benches. The core speed's not super high, so try to overclock that and see if we can get that a little bit higher. There's not really a great PBO system on the 1600 AF like there's on the 3600, so you're not going to get to go very far as performance goes. So on the 1600 AF, there's this huge mystery that I just cannot get over. If we go here to the CPU and we look at the temps that the CPU is running, right? The CPU currently says it's running at 37 degrees for temp and as low as 33 degrees. But when we look at what the Gigabyte motherboard is saying, it's saying it's 29 degrees. But the system's at 44 degrees Celsius. I mean, how are we getting below ambient on temperatures? I mean, there's a good cooling system in here right now. There's a 240 millimeter rad AIO that I'm running. But how is it possible that we're getting below ambient on the CPU temp? It just doesn't make sense. If I sit here and I bench this thing and I stress the CPU, the temps that it's reading goes up. It goes up to 42, maxes out maybe at 46, but that's just a little bit over ambient. How's that even possible? Maybe the temp sensor on these 12 nanometer processors just isn't that great. I don't know, or it's inaccurate. But the voltage that it's running when it's stressed all core full load here, well, we're seeing 1.125, so the voltage is low. So these AF part numbers are great from that perspective, in that, they've got them to be the most efficient units, but you're probably not going to get a lucky pull on a slot machine of the Silicon Lottery to get a unit like I did on the 3600 that I can run at 4.7 gigahertz. So went into BIOS, try to get some more clock out of it. Best we got was a 3.9 all core out of this thing, and since there is really not much in the way of PBO for Ryzen 1, which the 1600 AF is, it's not the 14 nanometer first gen Ryzen 1000. Really, it's a 2600. Is a bin 2600 is what it is. The temperatures kind of stayed effectively the same. So I mean, I still don't get why it's reading so low. The max core vid that we saw here was 1.12 volts. So it's low considering the 3600s can clock pretty damn well compared to this. So we've run Cinebench after we've been able to overclock this processor by up to 3.9 is about the max we got. There wasn't really a huge difference in overclocking ability with the new BIOS update. But this Cinebench score for multi-core is 2867 at 3.9 versus the stock 3.6 on the 1600 AF. That's good for about a 6% increase in performance. And when you compare what the CPU-Z benchmark does, it's about in line. For a single core or single threaded operation, it's a 5% increase, and in a multi-core, multi-threaded operation, it's about a 3% increase. So not a whole lot of overclocking headroom on a 1600 AF, which is really a 2600 R5 Ryzen. So, I mean, I think one of the key questions is it even worth buying an AIO to clock it? Probably not. So all the anecdotes I've seen before getting into the Team Red product was how you really can't do a whole lot with the processors. I'm sure that was true all the way up to the first initial release of 3600 and the 3000 series. But in these later 3000 series, the ability to overclock with a better quality silicon is much higher. I mean, it's sort of what my expectations are when I get an Intel K unlocked CPU. So I think if you're going to get into Team Red, now is the time to do it. You would have been disappointed, I think, previously. But, you know, maybe spend the money on AIO because you're going to use it again later, or on a custom water cooling loop that you're going to use with 4000. I think when AMD's 4000 comes out, that's going to be the game changer. I think that's when, you know, Intel's really going to get a nail in the coffin, and they're going to have to get off their tail and, you know, stop charging consumers so much money for a K SKU and having everything locked down and being able to give us things that are unlocked, because AMD is going to give them a run for their money. When those 4000 SKUs come out and the B550s with the VRMs that are going to be a much higher quality, that's when we're really going to be able to compete in a true head-to-head AMD versus Intel. So that's it for this 1600 disappointment AF, because there's not much you can do with it. It's a good budget build, probably for your kid or somebody doing their first build to try to squeeze out an extra $100 here of savings. But I'll tell you, if you're going to do one of these budget builds, spend the money on the motherboard, because you're going to need it. When it's time to upgrade that CPU later, you're going to be thankful that you've got the motherboard to support it. That's it.